What's up and welcome back to another video. My name is Miles Away. Now today I want to tell you a story, a very funny story about something I swore I would never do and then went ahead and did. And that is, of course, buying a synthesizer at full price, deciding it wasn't for me, reselling it at a loss, and then rebuying it about a year later again at full price. Now the synth in question, of course, is the colorful Moog Matriarch above me, and I think this story should hopefully share with you why I think this is such a special instrument and why I personally will be holding on to it forever. Another thing that inspired me to finally make this video and tell you guys this story is that there's been a lot of news recently about Moog, both good and bad. On the bad side, Moog was recently acquired by InMusic and they'll be shifting production to China. So I think it's a great time to highlight what might very well be the very last made in America Moog instrument, the Matriarch. On the flip side, on the good news, Moog Music is apparently unveiling its brand new flagship synthesizer based on the architecture of the Matriarch. Who knows, by the time you're seeing this, by the time I publish it, it might already be released. If so, comment in the comments what you think of it compared to the Matriarch. For both those reasons, I think now at the beginning of 2024 is the perfect time to highlight why the Moog Matriarch is probably one of the most unique and interesting synths made in the last 40 years, why I think it's a modern classic, and why I decided to break my rule and after selling it, reacquire one and add it to my studio to my forever collection. As always, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoy this kind of video, if you enjoy these synth videos, please like and subscribe. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what direction these long form videos are going to take on my channel. So any feedback and comments, I read them, I reply to them. I really appreciate it. And let's get started with a demo song I made using the Matriarch. So hopefully you enjoyed that demo track and hopefully you enjoyed the more weird, vibey, indie sound that I went for. And I did that very much on purpose to highlight that the Matriarch, whether you like it or not, has a distinct character that is very hard to replicate. Now, I think that was one of the main things that actually made me end up selling it, but that I've now grown to appreciate and love. Back in 2019, when I first bought the Matriarch, I was so excited. It was the most exciting and expensive flagship synth that I've ever bought. I brought it home, I fired it up, and I fell in love with patching it. However, when I started to actually try to use it in my music, I just couldn't really get it to mix properly. That's because at the time, from 2019 to 2020, I was pretty much exclusively making melodic dance music, EDM. The Matriarch has such a distinct personality and sound that I really had a hard time mixing it in and really using it much in my EDM tracks. If you listen carefully to some of my dance and pop songs, you can hear the Matriarch in there, especially if you listen carefully to the stereo bass parts.
I never thought about the facts that you left me. Kept my head straight when I wanted you to text me.
Next to you, I'll find a little place somewhere where the stars align. I'm breathing in the ocean air. I can make you mine.
However, the Matriarch really doesn't want to be in songs like this. The Matriarch wants to be somewhere where it can shine front and center, where you can take advantage of its extremely warm, in-your-face present Moog sound and that wonderful, lush, dark analog delay. So that leads me to the crux of this story. Why did I rebuy the Moog Matriarch after selling it and moving on from it because it didn't work for my productions? Well, the number one reason is that I really expanded what I produced beyond EDM. And I think that for me, my philosophy around what synths I like to have in my studio has really shifted in this way. Before, it really was, what is this going to do for the Miles Away sound? How can I use this in my Miles Away tracks? And how is it going to make my life easier? I think that's why before I really gravitated more towards synths that either were jack of all trades, like the Novation Summit, or synths that were really bright and cut through the mix easily, like the Sequential OB6. However, now, a lot of the music that I make is not EDM. So at the risk of creating too much gas, I'm really trying not to, I swear. That's why I have all these different instruments in my studio. My philosophy around buying synths has really changed, and I gravitate way more towards these interesting character pieces like the Moog Matriarch, like the Syntrix, like the OBX8, versus the jack of all trades, do-it-all synthesizers that can really just blend in anywhere, like the Prophet 6 or the Novation Summit. So that's my story. That's why I rebought the Moog Matriarch. Since getting it, I've been having a ton of fun diving in and designing sounds and really appreciating its sound character and limitations. Let's jump onto the front panel and see why I think it's so special. All right, well, here we are on the front panel of the Moog Matriarch. Now, I'm not going to do a full tour of every single feature because not only are there lots of great videos on there, but I've actually done videos on it as well. But I want to take a moment to go over why I think this synth is so special by going through the workflow. So at its core, the Matriarch has these 4 amazing Moog oscillators going into this wonderful Moog modular mixer. So each oscillator can be one of 4 wave shapes. Let's bring in oscillator 1. And right off the bat, as you bring each oscillator past 12, or the combination of all 4 goes past 12 o'clock on 1, if that makes sense, if my math lines up, you get this wonderful distortion. Let's try with the triangle, it's probably most obvious there. So listen to that. Right off the bat, we get that wonderful analog character. If you've seen any of my other videos, the 2 hardest things to do digitally are really good analog clipping and distortion and really good filters. So yeah, the absolute character of the sound is apparent from the first time you play a key. Let's bring in some more oscillators. Just insane. Going into that filter. So if you don't even want to get into the amazing patching and the stereo delay and the paraphony, this can just be a great classic Moog, like almost like a mini Moog or a Voyager, that kind of vibe. And the fact they went for 4 oscillators is huge. And the way Moog prices their instruments is that a 4 oscillator monosynth already would probably cost this much on its own. So the way I look at it is that you give up presets, obviously patch points, so no presets, in exchange for all these amazing features like the paraphony, the stereo delay, the patching, and it ends up being actually a better deal, in my opinion, than most of the other Moogs on the market. But anyway, let's go into quickly the filter section because the filter is amazing. It's got 3 different modes, and at its core, it's 2 filters. I mostly leave it in stereo filter mode because that's just so cool, like being able to assign separate resonance. The best respaces you'll ever hear. Look at that. Took us 5 seconds. We just add some glide. Glide's over here. Let's add more glide. Amazing. I would say that is probably the most common sound that I use the Matriarch for. And if you remember in the intro, I talked about how the Matriarch snuck its way onto some Miles Away releases like Next to You and Stardust. Well, it was for that sound because frankly, even in plugins, to get a respace that is stereo with independent resonance that sounds that lush, really hard to do. Okay, let's move on though to the other filter modes. So we've got our parallel high pass and low pass, which is another really like quirky, unique thing I love about this synth. So basically that's gonna run at the same time in parallel into both filters. So we get this very strange half low pass, half high pass filtered sound. It's not for all the time. But it sounds really cool, and if we start to drive that, because it takes away a lot of our volume, we can get some insane sounds. Like, let's go resonance high. Absolutely love it, like really cool. And then the classic, the last one is just in series. So if we take that down, we'll make our sound a bit more normal again. Frankly, I don't use this mode much because if I want to high pass things, I'll use like an EQ pedal or an EQ plugin. But it is cool if you kind of want to have that like almost band pass sound of setting your filter where you want it for your high pass down there and then low pass up here, and then adding some envelope for kind of a band pass style sound. You know what, I take you back, it is pretty cool that it exists. Like, you know, bandpass style basses are nice to layer over top, but let's just say that like you're not gonna be using this as your main one. The main star of the show is really this stereo low pass ladder filter, which we will leave on for the rest of the time. So let's just jump into the different paraphony modes and then the patching and the analog delay, because I think that's probably what makes the synth its most special, as great as it sounds just as a standard monosynth. So the delay, obviously, just incredible. I recently did a video on the Walrus Marakai, which is insane. It's amazing. It's basically the first full stereo analog BBD delay pedal. And that pedal alone is $699 US, I believe, or about 1,000 Canadian. And you basically just get a stereo analog delay of the same quality, not quite as many features, but of the same quality just built into this synth. Let me know in the comments if you agree, but one of my main synth wishes is I wish that more synth companies would do stuff like this or the Matrix Brute, where they do unique analog effects instead of average DSP digital effects. It's one of my main pet peeves when I buy a new synth and I just know that the digital effects are gonna be pretty bad and they just, you know, they've obviously spent money and time putting them in there. I would much rather have just one interesting effect like this, or like what the Matrix Brute has, the selection of analog effects, or the Grandmother Spring Reverb, and then just not have any digital effects, because this is way cooler and I can't replicate that. It becomes like, it's hard to explain, but it becomes like a part of the instrument rather than just an effect. Anytime I use this synth, I'm using that delay. It's a core part of the character of the sound. That, if you remember my ARP 2600 video, that was my favorite thing about the 2600 by far, and the thing I missed the most about it was the spring reverb works the same way. It becomes like you associate the two together. The ARP 2600 with spring reverb, the Moog Matriarch with this wonderful stereo delay. So we'll leave it on. It's got ping pong mode, which I love. But the main thing is just, you know, the spacing and then the time. Fun fact, if you want to clock it really slow, you can just turn your ARP sequence rate down and then turn this all the way down, and you get that awesome kind of like Chase Bliss mood style lo-fi artifacting delay. Right? Pretty cool. Anyways, so last thing to tour here before we get into some fun patching is going to be the different paraphony modes. So I've had the Matriarch now off and on for pretty much since it came out in 2019, and I can safely say that as great as it is in 4-voice mode, which is obviously the main selling feature, like beautiful, sounds incredible on its own. This is where all of your mix headaches are going to come from. So just be very wary that if you're doing these kind of sounds like this, you know, it sounds beautiful, you know. Let's add some LFO here. Great LFO section, by the way. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over it, but the LFO section here and then the bonus one here, one of my favorite implementations on any monosynth or semi-modular synth, period. Like, absolutely gorgeous. How good does that sound? Anyways, I could play with this sound all day, but trust me when I say 4-voice paraphony mode, you want to be using this sound where it's the feature of the track, because it's so mid-range heavy, it's so massive, the delay is so dark. Like, this is the sound of the Moog Matriarch, and you have to appreciate its character and make your mix around it. That's my opinion, at least. So with that being said, the 2-voice paraphonic mode I find actually really usable, especially if we kind of dial things back a little bit here. Let's change these to square waves and just jack up the pulse width modulation here. Like, I absolutely love this dual paraphonic mode for film score, for trailer music, for drones. I find that the mixer, and I'm getting nerdy here, I'm sorry, but the mixer just deals the best with the oscillators for whatever reason when there are only 2 pitches or less being played. When I am in 4-voice mode here, I really have to be careful, because if I turn everything up here, it's gonna just be like mud soup. Which is cool if you're really into that like doom shoegaze sound, but for me, I like things a little bit cleaner, so you really have to dial things back and be really respectful of the mixer, which in that case, it's beautiful, but you lose a little bit of the character, whereas when you're in 1-voice mode, you can go nuts, and that distortion, obviously, you know, it just adds to the tone of the sound from the fact that they're all playing the same pitch. And then 2-voice mode, you actually can get away with something similar. Again, it's like the maximum amount of voices that the way the mixer clips and distorts will allow it to work well together. Oh, how sick does that sound? Like that right there, to me, the clipping mixer, duo mode, the stereo delay, we haven't even patched anything, and that is a sound that is just so definitively the Moog Matriarch. That's why I rebought this thing. You cannot get that, to my knowledge, maybe with the new Moog, you cannot get that any other way. Anyways, so let's do some patching. Let's patch this thing. Let's get it sounding good. Again, there are going to be full patching tutorials. My old video on the Matriarch, if you excuse the filming quality, has tons of patching tips. Loop Pop's video is great, so we won't spend a lot of time here, but I will show you a couple of my favorite ones. So right off the bat, my absolute favorite thing to patch here is to take the attenuator into time 1 of the delay. And I'm going fast here because, again, I've done this before in my other video. And then I'm using really long patch cables here, take LFO2, triangle out into the input of the attenuator. So basically we're sending the LFO slowly and only a little bit of it to the time of the delay. So if I show you what that sounds like here. You're basically getting this really unique modulation where you're only modulating the time 1 of the delay, and it's a stereo delay. So what this makes it sound like, it's a really interesting audio illusion where it makes it sound like this really seasick kind of LFO tape machine warble, but in a way that I've never really heard, because you're not just, if I just turn this off for a second, you're not just doing something as simple as modulating all of the oscillator's pitch, which sounds good, it's classic. You're actually modulating just one of the 2 delay lines, which is beautiful and really unique. So there we go. You gotta be really subtle with it. Like if you look, I'm barely even touching the attenuator here, but what that will do, if we turn this up, if I take it away, It just adds this like magical character in my opinion. Incredible. So that's my favorite tip. Another thing I would really recommend that's related is if you do have a Matriarch, get yourself some of these guys. I'm not sure if the camera will pick them up in focus, but basically they are, I think they're from Tip Top Audio or Hosa, but they're patch cables that allow you to essentially turn each of them into a mult. The Matriarch does have mults here and here, but basically this is way easier, and I'm lazy. I go for things that are quick and don't take me out of the moment when I'm producing. So by taking this, again, a comically long cable, this is just what I had handy, and going into time 1, then we can also go out of time 1, sorry, we can go out of the same LFO and attenuator into time 2. And what that'll do is that'll give us the same modulation on both of the delay lines. And this is equivalent to like a classic like delay modulation. That's what this is. Yeah, the fact that you're able to patch the delay in so much detail, absolutely one of my favorites. But anyways, let's move on. I'm gonna show you one more patching tip just because, again, this is just kind of a bonus video on the Matriarch, not a full tutorial. But my second favorite patching tip has to be the power of the FM on this. Again, very similar to what I loved about the 2600, and obviously I was very sad when I had to sell the 2600. I missed the FM, but I'm pleased to inform you that the Matriarch's FM is just as good. So not only can you do linear FM in on each of these oscillators, which is cool. If we just turn this down, you know, we could go from oscillator 2, wave out into linear FM in. Classic, but I actually prefer to do FM on the filter. So if we go ahead, let's take oscillator 4, which we're not going to use, and then let's bring back in our other 3 oscillators and bring it back to duo mode here, which I love. Great. Okay, we'll bring these to saw waves. They're a little bit cleaner. Not cleaner, they're a little bit less boomy. Let's bring back our amazing delay here. Like, come on, already right there, we're just resetting the patch and already that's a dope sounding like film score, like synthwave, dark Blade Runner style patch. Let's go ahead and go from the wave out of the oscillator 4, again into our attenuator. The fact that the Matriarch has 2 attenuators, so useful, right? Like just if you're building a Euro rack system, just the attenuators and the mults alone are gonna start eating up so much of your budget. And this thing just has 2 of them built in and they're in really convenient places. Moog doesn't get enough credit for the ergonomics and workflow of why everything is so fun to play and work so well. Anyway, going from our attenuator again, which if you remember is like the amount knob for modulation, and going into cutoff 1. Let's start with just 1 cutoff. We might be modulating only one side. Actually, let's do cutoff 2 here. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so we're modulating only one side of the stereo filter, which is so cool. Like crazy sound design right there. Like tell me that that is not something more unique than most, classic filter FM type sounds you've heard. I don't know what it is about this stereo filter and how it reacts to the modulation and the fact that you're doing real analog FM, not just some LFO that's digital that's really fast, but absolutely insane sounds. And then we're gonna do our same trick here where we take our patch cable that has the ability to turn itself into a mult. Again, I'm lazy. We could just literally do it with the mult here, but I'm lazy. I love these patch cables. I pretty much never use my mults unless I have something that needs more than 3 things. But we'll go into filter cutoff 1, and then we'll go into filter cutoff 2. And then now we'll get that traditional FM sound. Let's play around with this here. Add some sync. Maybe turn it down a little bit. Like, incredible. Basically, if you're not following along, what I'm doing is I am syncing oscillator 4 to oscillator 1 with this incredible analog hard sync sound, and then I'm sending analog oscillator 4, which is this crazy synced waveform already, through the attenuator to FM both filters. Like, just like that, it was so easy. We've got this insane sounding futuristic track. Let's bring in our delay. Hold it there. We'll change some waveforms. So cool, right? Just like that, we've created this incredible organic and weird sound. And it's really not for every occasion, but when it works, and it's fantastic. All right, well, that concludes our brief tour of the Moog Matriarch. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you enjoyed my story. And let me know in the comments below if there's any synths that you've bought and then sold and then later rebought. Because for me, this is the first and only one, and I vow to never do it again. For now at least. But either way, let me know in the comments below what you think of the new Moog synth, if you think it's better or worse than the Matriarch, if you're gonna be getting it or you're gonna try to get a Matriarch. If you want my opinion, if you like the sound, there's still nothing on the market that sounds and acts like the Moog Matriarch. It's truly unique and special, and I'm so happy and lucky to have owned one, because who knows, with the way that Moog Music is going after the acquisition, we might not be able to get these for very much longer. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.